Well, he speaketh too soon. Exactly 2 weeks out of the race, Sam got sick. In fact, he got very sick. Goodness me. Sore throat, fever, stuffy nose. It was one of those debilitating sickness. Absolute cessation of all exercise for multiple days, more than 72 hours by my memory. And at the same time, he also had the resurgence of a very small niggle that just popped up. And it's so often you reduce the training load, the niggle pops up. And his Achilles was talking to him. Little bit of tendonitis in there. And that can be incredibly debilitating for running speed and performance. And so he had no opportunity to train through. He was sick. And we had this big question mark that ultimately wasn't going to get answered before race day, which was, is my Achilles going to handle running very, very fast off of a very demanding bike course with these fleet-footed runners? So what could we do? Well, the answer was nothing. His only path was rest, sleep, and hydration. And so for the next 3 to 5 days, he did nothing. And for a professional athlete, in fact, for any athlete, that is mentally absolutely debilitating. You lose all of the rhythm. It's like trying to land the plane in extreme turbulence. And we actually lost all oversight because as I'm going through, I don't have any rhythm to see, okay, is he freshening up too quickly and do we need to keep the work up there? Or is he still carrying some fatigue and do we need to really freshen up? His body cannot yield adaptations. It's fighting infection. And the muscles, while they're getting rest, because he was lying in bed for the most part, is still not getting that little bit of activation that all athletes really rely on. And so the mission went from, hey, Sam, we need to learn or land the proverbial plane, to all we need to do is get healthy. That's our mission. And one day before Sam got on the plane for a very long journey, flying to Europe, transferring through Frankfurt by memory, straight down to South Africa for another 10 or 11 flight, we had a conversation. And that was, should he go? Should he go from Boulder to his base in South Africa, all that way, not even knowing if he was going to be able to be on the start line, let alone get to the finish line, let alone have any impact on the best field that's ever been assembled for this distance of race? We decided we'll go for it. Had such a good season and everything was there, and magic can occur. You can't gain any more fitness, and there are some things that we just don't know, but let's go and see what happens. And so we got to the race location probably 4 or 5 days before the actual race itself. And the good news is at that point, he started to feel much better. And I'm sure as a listener, you've gone through this before. You can be incredibly sick, and it's almost impossible to imagine even running 5 kilometers, let alone competing in a race. But as soon as that fever breaks, within a day, you can hardly remember that debilitating feeling. And you don't feel rhythm, you don't feel primed, but you can't feel how bad, you can't remember how bad you felt. And he got to that place right when he landed. So suddenly we had the cruelest of all things. We had hope. Now, this was incredibly challenging for him. He felt better. His Achilles didn't hurt, and that was good. But we had no idea how the body was going to respond. And he hadn't run for more than a week at this point. So we had no idea how he could handle 21 kilometers of running at give or take about 3 minute per kilometer pace. So that's around 5 minute miles for 13 miles. It's running very, very fast. So let's pause and consider the situation here. Massive training, ideal runway, and then 2 weeks to go, the carpet is just pulled out from under his feet. He had no compass, no direction, and a whole host of reasons that could have, perhaps should have, added fear, doubt, concern in his ability to perform against the very best endurance athletes in the world. So how would you respond there? What would you do? What do you imagine your mindset would be? And before you just say, oh, I'd be F it and just go and get it, this is your career. You're actually reliant, because it's not like Sam was just rolling around in the dollars here. these race performances had a direct impact on his ability to earn money for the whole of the next year. And so, how can you do it? 2 days before the race, we had a very important conversation. And I asked Sam, as I would with any pro, all right, how are we going to do this, Sam? You see, I don't like to just tell athletes what to do. I don't want to force my opinion. I prefer it to emerge from them themselves, and then I can course correct if I have my own perspective to add. And you know what Sam's response was? No compass, no direction, had some hope, but he really had no idea. He said, I race like I'm ready. And what they meant by that was there were going to be zero changes to his approach. There was going to be no shift in mindset. He wasn't going to have any backing away from the challenge. And I'll never forget the words that I told Sam. I said, look, I have to be honest here. We have no idea what your body is going to give you on race day. But why don't we do this? Why don't we ask the body the question and then allow the body, not the mind, to provide the answer? And that's a really important component. Ask the body the question, what are you going to give me today? And commit to bringing your best effort, and then allow the body the space to provide the answer. So really what I was saying there is something very simple, and that's a high performance mindset trait. Sam, control the controllable. So I ask you, what could Sam control? Well, he could control his mindset, and he decided on one of attack and his absolute commitment that no matter how his body responded, he was going to go in on the front foot. He was going to bring his best on that day, whatever it was. There are echoes of Mark Allen there. Whatever percentage you show up at the race, get 100% out of it. And that was Sam's approach. Yes, there was uncertainty. We didn't know what the body was going to give, but he went in on the front foot. So he could control his mindset. The second thing he could control is his execution. And so don't be defensive here. Ride at the swim, line up at the front. Ride strong, how we were trained for all year. Ride strong on the bike with the approach that we've been developing and working on throughout the whole of the season. And then try his best on the run. And that was going to be the moment that we would see how the body would respond. The third thing he could control is his decision making, a commitment to stay aware within the race and have the courage to make the brave decisions based on the dynamics that were unfolding. At professional racing, you can't just have a race strategy that you're going to go and deploy in a vacuum. You need to have the ability and the courage to make decisions around what's going on in the race dynamics. And so he had control over those decisions. And then finally, practically, he had control over making sure his equipment was race ready and ensuring that he had his race fueling and hydration dialed in and he executed on it. So all of these elements were under his control. And that's empowering. Mindset, execution, decision making, equipment setup, race fueling and hydration. Well, that's suddenly quite a lot to focus on. That's good. And so in the last 72 hours going into the race, the last 48 hours, the last 36, the last 24 hours, all of our energy went into aspects that Sam had direct control over, control the controllables. And so after that talk, that discussion that we had, that was only about 5 minutes in duration, in the last couple of days, we never discussed sickness, setbacks, disruptions, Achilles. We weren't going to give that any mind because we couldn't control that anymore. The body was going to provide the answer. Instead, we talked about execution, mindset, decision, commitments, all of the aspects under his control. On race day, Sam sent me a simple text. I'm ready. Ready for what, you might ask? Ready to win? To go and have a great day? To beat others? No. Ready to execute every aspect under his control to the best of his ability. That's what he was ready for, because that's what he could control. Ready to execute every aspect that was under his control to the best of his ability. When you do that, you cannot fail because you bring your best. Place all of the emphasis and the focus on this. Put aside the what ifs, the potential excuses, the worries, the concern, the fear, and ask the body the question and allow it, the body, to provide the answer. Now, make no mistake, this was the most relaxed and calm that I'd ever seen Sam going into a world championship. And it was among some of the worst 2-week preparation going to a race that we've ever had and I could have imagined. So what happened in the race? You want to know, don't you? Well, here it was, the swim first. It was fast, very fast. And if you need translation, fast. On TV, Sam was flawless in execution, but not because he just went out and he was right to the front. In fact, it was quite different than that. This was one of the first races where they really had great TV production, including drones over the main pack of the swim. And at one point, me with my beady eye looking at all of the swim strokes, I could see Sam, and he was sitting in about 13th position. I was concerned that was a little too far back. But you know what happened? Sam realized it too. Do you remember I talked about race awareness? In the middle of the chaos and the turbulence and the physical contact of a pro swim, at or above a threshold heart rate, so your breathing and your heart rate up close to max, he was thinking, he was gauging where he was managing. And he realized he wasn't in an optimal position. And I saw him meander through and accelerate and slide through the pack. And he moved up 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 spots. Suddenly he was sitting on the third swimmer. And you know what happened? 45 seconds after that, there was a split in the pack. 10 swimmers broke away. And Sam, who was sitting in 13th, would have been, despite physically being well capable to be in the front group, would have suddenly found himself in the second pack. But he moved and he earned his spot in that first group. You know what happened? At the end of the race, of those top 10 swimmers that got out of the water with that gap, 9 of them finished in the top 10. So it was absolutely decisive on the race day. Now, if Sam at that time in the swim was worried about sickness or uncertainty or setbacks or any of those components, he wouldn't have been able to put his focus and attention into awareness and decision making. He focused on the controllables. He controlled that. He made decisions. He moved, and it was decisive. Control the controllables. The bike, it was also very, very fast. While the group were 10 meters apart, there was minimal drafting. Sam, after 2 weeks of almost nothing and having absolutely no idea how he could run, he was the protagonist on the bike. He kept making the bike harder and harder. He ended up finishing first off the bike. And the big thing wasn't that he broke away solo. He still had the 9 others in that group with him. But do you know what did occur? The gap between 10th and 11th was huge. He was one of the main protagonists to ensure that the bikers rode the bike hard and got the gap on those very, very fast runners. In fact, there was only one single fast runner left a long way behind who managed to build back into the top 10. The rest of them, 11th to 20th. In a world championships, kind of irrelevant. And so Sam was the primary catalyst to break that race apart. And that whole season, race plan executed. And now to find out the answer. We all want to know the answer now. What was the body going to provide on the run? Well, was it a dream run? A massive breakthrough? No, but it was pretty good. He didn't get the first in the world, second in the world, third in the world that we dreamed of, but he did get sixths, highly respectable, and more importantly, a spectacular personal performance set amongst massive adversity. And the only way he emerged with this performance was because of his mindset. The physical preparation was there for months before, but the adversity would have knocked many people off their pedestal. He was pushed back on his heels physically, but it would have been so easy to enable that to destroy his race and smash his confidence mentally. And so Sam, for me, was a massively compelling story about a key mindset trait of high performance: control the controllable. When a pro athlete or a high performer is met with massive adversity, I consistently observed over the course of the last 20 years that they tend to revert back to their really basic habits. They filter out distractions and they make things simple. And they come back and basically ask the question to themselves: what can I control? And in this situation, all Sam could control was his mindset, his execution, his decision making. And so he went with that, placing focus on the things that could maybe provide a tent peg in the hurricane that they're existing in, the ability to move forward and progress. And ultimately, what emerges out of it is the very best personal performance that they can achieve in the context of what's occurred. And so that World Championships for Sam, it wasn't the dream performance, but it was a dream performance on a personal level. He did everything under his control. And that, for me as a coach, is how you earn ultimate respect. That's why I have so much respect for him as an athlete, because I looked at him that day and I thought, you brave bastard. I'm not sure if I could have done that back in my time. It was tremendous. Now, why am I telling you the story? Because this is a story about an elite athlete, but you don't need to be any sort of an elite athlete to apply this lesson. Because this mindset trait applies to anything that you care about and want to perform in. All we're talking about here is high performance. So, as Sam's story around a world championship was another fine example of why I place so much emphasis on focusing on aspects that you can control as a part of my coaching. This principle, control the controllable, it extends far beyond sports. Research actually supports its power in both athletic and professional settings. Studies show that when you focus on controllable factors, it improves your resilience, your ability to perform under pressure. That story sounded like that, didn't it? It's true. For example, a study out of the Journal of Sports and Exercise Psychology found that athletes who focus on controllable aspects such as their effort, their mindset, their execution had higher levels of performance, but also lower levels of anxiety. And do you remember in the story I said, this is the most calm that I ever saw Sam? That's because he succeeded on placing the emphasis on the controllables versus an athlete who focuses on uncontrollable outcomes and raises anxiety. That's all peer reviewed. Now, if we apply this to a business setting, the absolute same approach can be transformative. When executives focus on what they can influence, such as their strategy, their communication, their decision making, they remain adaptable and effective, even when they're faced with uncontrollable market shifts or external pressures. And similar research published in the Journal of Applied Psychology absolutely support this as well, showing that individuals who emphasize controllable factors experience less stress and are better equipped to cope with workplace demands. Really interesting stuff. And so I hope you enjoyed the first edition, our little essays of lessons of high performance. Folks, we're going to be doing this next time. I think next time we're going to introduce a business executive and break apart a similar trait around high performance. We will see you next time. Have fun and keep cracking on the journey of high performance. Cheers.